15 seconds still.
I'll yield the rest of the time.
Okay.
Thank you.
Senator Warnock.
Thank you, Chair Scott. During the spring 2023 banking crisis, many small businesses struggled simply to pay their employees and to cover expenses only because those businesses chose the wrong bank to keep their money safe. Small businesses, in my view, should not be punished for the mistakes of failed bank executives. And that's why I'm glad this committee is looking at ways to reform deposit insurance. However, we should be careful not to place additional strains on our community banks, many of which serve populations and communities that giant Wall Street banks don't. Mr. Kelly, community banks in Georgia and across the country compete with big banks by knowing and investing in the communities they serve. Are you concerned about deposit flight to big banks where small businesses rush to put their money in the biggest Wall Street banks because they're nervous about keeping their money safe?
Yes, Senator Warnock, thank you for the question. I would tell you, whatever it's called, if you look at what took place in 2023, there was inherent flight that was moving because of nervousness and anxiety within the business community. And so the efforts that we're talking about today hopefully will bolster confidence and allow small businesses to feel more confident in putting their monies in the small businesses in the small towns in the state of Georgia.
In fact, we have seen over the last 2 decades about a 50% drop in the number of community banks. And at the same time, Wall Street banks have continued to make more and more and more money, getting bigger and bigger. How should we ensure that small community banks, and let me be clear, I think there's a role in the larger ecosystem for the big banks and the small community banks. But we clearly, all the movement has been going in one direction. So how should we ensure that small community banks do not foot the bill for deposit insurance reform legislation?
I think it has to be carefully considered. We also have to ensure that there's adequate regulation, Senator Warnock, on this topic. Regulation can run and cause our businesses to be challenged economically. And you see, really, in looking at what's happening in the consolidation, a lot of that is economics. One issue I will bring up that's probably not part of this topic is when you look at things that look like a bank, act like a bank, and can buy a bank, it should be taxed like a bank. And my point is we have a lot of inequities across the system that we need to deal with. Taxation is one of those that will allow these small institutions to stay in small towns like Griffin, Georgia, or Hayhira, Georgia. That's important to be sure that they become the lifeblood for economic prosperity in these small towns.
So this issue is further complicated by technology and other disruptors, correctly?
Absolutely.
Correct.
I think partnerships, et cetera, a need to help overcome those technological challenges.
We could see reform if we're not careful in Congress that creates further consolidation.
That is a concern. I think there could be unintended consequences. That's why our proposal, the 10 recommendations, we thought was a little bit more comprehensive. If you take a rifle shot approach at this, we are concerned about unintended consequences.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Kelly. Mr. Harrison, how will a proposal to increase deposit insurance limits for business accounts help smaller community banks compete with big Wall Street banks?
It really levels the playing field, Senator. Thank you for the question. And that's all we're asking for, is being able to compete on a level playing field. When we saw some of those deposits leave after Silicon Valley, not only did they not come back, but then that introduced the larger banks into our customer base. And so you're fighting just to hold on to the customers you had and have serviced for many, many years. So by the higher deposit limit, knowing their operating account is safe, that you'd be able to protect that and prevent that from happening next time.
Thank you very much. I think it's so important for us to get this right and to remain focused on getting this done, but getting it done right so that we don't worsen the problem. I'm going to stop now just to say that I beat Angela Albrook's record.